So thanks everyone for joining. My name's Chris. I'm the founder of UK Homes Network. If you're not aware of what UK Homes Network is, we are a property networking app and an alternative to social media for developers and investors. It's a place where you can collaborate, share deals. Also, you can talk about all the problems that are happening within the industry, lean on expert advice, like exactly what I'm doing for this webinar with Mark joining us. Mark is also a network member. Yeah, we've just launched, as of last week, a free membership. So it means that you can sign up to UK Homes Network for free, and you can start networking with some of our other members. So we're going to kick things off. So basically, this is a half-an-hour webinar session where we're going to talk about demolition and preparing a site for development. Mark has been one of our supporters of UK Homes Network since the platform started. And Mark has already been sharing some of the stuff that Beecroft Demolition have been doing already into the platform. So I feel that this is a subject we're all fascinated by, blowing stuff up, knocking stuff down. So I wanted to give Mark the chance to come on and talk to us and educate us really on what safe demolition entails and what it looks like. So Mark, if you don't mind, could you just sort of introduce yourself to the audience and let us know who you are, what's brought you to being in a position of owning a demolition company? And
I'm crazy. So my name is Mark Jack. I'm currently the managing director of Beecroft Demolition, which I set up with my brother 3 years ago, having spent over 20 years in the demolition industry. I've previously held senior roles at some of the largest demolition contractors in the country. I'm a chartered member of the Institute of Builders. I'm a full member of the Institute of Demolition Engineers, and also a consultant specialist for the National Emergency Services Support Task Force, which assists the fire brigade in emergencies. I sit on the Chelmsford CIB Chelmsford Hub Committee. I also sit on the Institute of Demolition Engineers Council of Management and their membership committee. As I say, I've been involved with demolition for about 20 years. Throughout my career, I've been involved with projects ranging from the demolition of power stations, nuclear and coal-fired, petrochemical plants, pharmaceutical plants. I've worked on large residential projects, high-rise tower blocks, city centres, right down to sort of the demolition of private houses. The Beecroft projects that we're working on now, that obviously we're still quite a young company, so we're a bit smaller than what we've been working on with the larger contractors. But as a new company, we've had to sort of start small, doing strip outs and demolition of smaller buildings. But obviously we're building the company. We're now starting to see some larger projects coming in, so hopefully we're trying to get the brand out there, as it were, and yeah, move forward.
Great. So that's quite varied in terms of nuclear power stations, right down to smaller residential projects. What would you say is that the biggest projects you've worked on and also the smallest?
I mean, probably the biggest projects I've worked on recently was the Aylesbury estate in Southwark. That's for a previous employer. It was sort of a £14 million regeneration project, and it was the demolition of 9 tower blocks and associated asbestos removal, land remediation, bulk excavation. It was a 3-year project, like a phased 3-year project. That was one of the largest I've worked on, and then the smallest projects. One of the obviously with Beecroft, we're probably doing demolition of, as I say, when we started out, we were doing sort of garages, shop strip outs, house strip outs, anything we could really do to earn some money and get the name out there, as it were. So
Yeah, absolutely. And could you sort of give us an insight into the process? Because obviously, when you're looking at sort of a site in Suffolk that's, you know, of that size, I imagine that it's quite time intensive in terms of how much preparation goes into that, um, particularly around safety. So, what would that look like in terms of a full time scale of from the point of, um, you know, preparing, planning to then, is there a lot of stuff you have to do once the buildings are actually down?
Um, Again, that really does depend on the size of the project. Obviously, the planning that goes into demolishing a power station is a bit more than demolishing Mr. Smith's garage, but nevertheless, each project I've ever carried out is planned to ensure it's executed safely and to the highest standards. I think the persona of demolition possibly is that we just turn up with our bulldozer and our wrecking balls and smash stuff up. But there is a lot more that goes into projects, and some projects it can take months to plan before you actually see operatives on the ground, boots on the ground, and actually starting works.
Great stuff. And you just touched on it there. I mean, is there sort of a difference between the sites that you would use a wrecking ball for, or for explosives? You knew I was going to ask this question.
Yeah, I see. It's the question I get asked most, to be honest with you. It's when you tell someone that you do demolition, the two questions you get asked is, do you knock stuff down with a wrecking ball, and do you blow stuff up? Um, but if I'm honest with you, the wrecking ball in this country is pretty much it's gone by the wayside. It's not seen as a safe method of demolition anymore. I've certainly only ever seen it once, and that was when I was a 17-year-old labourer when I first started out. The technology has moved on so much now. The machinery that we use, the attachments that we can use, you're to a point now where a good machine driver can probably take an egg out of an egg cup without smashing the egg. It's it really has moved on to, and that's through technology, and it's trying to make the environment the guys are working in a lot safer than it used to be in the early 90s maybe.
Fair enough. And I guess obviously from a safety perspective, it's more about a brick by brick process and ensuring everything's coming out safely as you're taking it away. So I mean, is there many jobs, for example, you see a lot of stuff on social media where it's the old cooling towers are coming down with the explosives underneath. Is that kind of sort of work that you get involved with as well?
I have been involved in that, not so much through Beecroft, but I would say in this country, mainly industrial demolition is where they use explosives. They've obviously got a large area. We don't generally use explosives in city centres and towns. They're obviously heavily populated, and there's so much planning goes into using explosives. You sort of set an exclusion zone up for the explosives, and basically everything in that exclusion zone needs to be cleared out of that exclusion zone. So if there's houses in that exclusion zone, you've got to relocate people. You need to talk to the police, the highways. That to to take a chimney down for explosives, you're probably looking at a 6-month process. And as I say, there's a lot of planning and conversations that need to go on to be able to do that. So it's not widely used. I think the Americans use it a lot more. I've seen them in Las Vegas and blowing hotels up, but it's not really for us. From our point of view, it's safer to do them using other techniques of demolition.
And could you sort of touch on what those techniques are?
So, I mean, you've got a sort of conventional demolition, which is machinery ranging from, I don't know, you could say like a 20-ton machine right up to a 100-ton machine, various attachments. You've got sort of pulverizer attachments, which it looks like a dinosaur's jaw, sort of for the layman, that pulverized concrete. You've got shear attachments, which cut steel. So that's sort of your conventional. Then you've got a top down, which we do in sort of city centres, whereby we shroud the whole building in scaffold and monoflex, and then lift machines up onto the building and take that down a floor at a time. I mean, depending on what the makeup of the building is, the structure of the building sort of depends on the method that you use, and also the location of the building. as an effect on what method you use.
Yeah, I mean that sort of brings me on to my next question. Really, is there anything that you particularly look for in a site that you know is going to make it an easy job, or, for example, you know, is it if the land is flat, you know, if it's on an incline, that kind of thing, is that all taken into consideration? What is it that, from a demolition perspective, makes a site more difficult when you're creating those plans?
As I said, I think probably each project is taken separately. I mean, we've got a project at the minute which is it's only a two-story building. It's not a massive building, but the location of it's right next to a Premier Inn one side. There's a building site the other side, and it's on a main road through Woolwich High Street. So
Right.
we've actually had to top down that one as opposed to doing a conventional sort of demolition, and that's purely the fact of the location of it. So yeah, I mean, you know, when we sort of go and look at these, we'd assess the area that the building is in, the age of the building, the makeup of the building, and that would probably determine our method of demo.
Fair enough. And you sort of mentioned in your intro that you deal in asbestos. Is that something you personally deal with quite a bit?
There's two types of asbestos. I mean, I don't want to teach people to suck eggs, but you've got two types of asbestos. You've got a notifiable asbestos and a non-notifiable asbestos. Now, our guys are trained to deal with a non-notifiable, which is like your garage roofs, it's cement, you know, it's but the licensed stuff is dealt with by licensed contractors. We don't do that in-house, we subcontract that out, but we've got a few companies that we use. And yeah, as I say, it's a specialist. The HSC licensed that, it's heavily regulated. So that's more of a specialist area is notifiable asbestos.
Great stuff. And you mentioned some of your other roles that you do and some of the boards you sit on. Could you explain a little bit more about those?
So the Institute of Demolition Engineers, I sat on the council of that for about 8 years now. There's sort of 10 people on the council, and the institute is really there. There's two. So within the demolition industry, you've got the National Federation of Demolition Contractors, who is for the mainly for the contractor, and then you've got the Institute of Demolition Engineers, who is for the person, and it's looking at the science behind demolition really, and we're trying to foster like safe demolition. We produced the first degree in demolition, which we rolled out a couple of years ago. And we're just trying to bring the demolition industry, the education of the demolition industry, people's perception of the demolition industry. We want people to understand that it is a science that we're not just pulling in with, like I said before, bulldozers and wrecking stuff. We are actually, an industry, and there is a bit of science that goes beyond demolition.
Great stuff. And in terms of sort of other stakeholders that you're working with and the science that goes into it, I mean, are you guys are you structural engineers internally, or are you sort of working with third parties and planning agencies when you're sort of prepping a site?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our buildings that we come across, we work with temporary works. We do a lot of temporary works, facade retention. Again, previously not really with Beecroft at the minute, but previously where I've worked, a lot of our works that we're doing now involves design of temporary works. We will use engineers to investigate the structure that we're knocking down. I would say to anyone sort of doing it, from a client side, I think early engagement with a demolition contractor and a competent demolition contractor is key. There's an old saying that piss poor planning produces a piss poor performance, and I was told that from a young age. And I think it really does. There's a lot of people out there who say they do demolition. You get a builder who say, I can knock that down for you, but my view is that's where it goes wrong.
Yeah, I can imagine there's a few horror stories out there. Is that something you deal with? Is that where builders have gone in and they've made a hash of it, and then you've got to try and rectify it?
We have been involved in a few of those, yeah. I've certainly been involved in a couple of those. You get the phone call afterwards when the scaffold's in the street, and can you come and help us out? Can you come and rectify what we've done? We've priced projects, and we were told that we were too expensive. They went with the cheaper option, and again, cheapest isn't always best.
No, No, there was a similar story. So you might know I live in Coventry, but spent most of my life in a town called Nuneaton, which is not something you really want to brag about on a webinar. But they used to have a co-op department store in the town, and half the building was listed. And they wanted to basically knock the internal walls down and use the outside facade to remodel the entire building, and they'd actually used the contractors themselves to go into the building and bring everything down and leave the external walls up. Unfortunately, they didn't tie the walls when they were doing it, so the whole building collapsed, and the scaffolds that were still tied to the front of the front envelope basically launched itself into the high street and nearly killed about 3 people. So yeah, I've got a first eyewitness experience of why demolition is so important. But no, I was going to just sort of head straight to Glenn's question, because he's asked something quite interesting. So Glenn said, Mark, does RAAC concrete have asbestos?
I don't, to be quite honest, without doing a survey, I wouldn't imagine it does, to be quite honest. So the projects that we've been involved with, it doesn't. Sometimes this asbestos can be used as an insulation and sprayed onto the underside of it, but actually in the rack, I wouldn't have said so, no.
And I'll best do Andy's question, otherwise he'll be direct messaging me in the network for it. Mark, have you ever used drone footage to highlight some of the sites and the projects that you've worked on?
I was involved with a project at Tilbury Docks. They had some grain silos over there, and two of the grain silos, it was combustion inside and it actually exploded, taking half of the roof off. And the grain was still smouldering throughout the whole project, and we had to use drones and with like a little heat sensor on them to see where the heat patches were as we carried out the demolition. And if it got too hot, we had to stop and soak the area. And yeah, so we have used drone. The drones are coming in a bit more with the land remediation side of stuff and the bulk excavation, because you can actually use those drones now to measure spore piles, muck piles and whatever else. So they are actually being used like that. And we also use them to fly around old buildings. If it's not safe to go into those buildings, they can be used to go places where we necessarily wouldn't want to go.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Mark. And one of the things we wanted to touch on, obviously, was the retrofitting side of it, because over the last few years, there's been a lot of change in permitted development rights around, particularly Class MA, where commercial conversions are something that's quite a hot topic, where developers are going in and changing commercial premises into residential. But one of the things that a lot of people are not sort of aware of is that there's also a permitted development right, which is Class ZA, which actually gives you the ability to demolish as well. So Mark, I just wanted to kind of ask what your experience has been like around that. Are you seeing that less people are choosing to go down the demolition route because of these new permitted development rights, or is there stuff that you can do on the retrofitting side?
I mean, the retrofitting side, demolition and retrofit, again, it really does depend on the building that you're knocking down. I mean, the Class ZA basically allows for commercial and residential buildings to be demolished and a new dwelling or a house built. Obviously, as with anything, there's some rules and regulations which the builders and developers have to sort of apply to. There's still things you've got to go to council through, so it's not as easy as just pulling the building down and putting back what is there. And there's also rules around the age, the use, the height. There's various things that stopping you do that. But with regards to retrofitting, I personally think it's going to be. I don't think demolition is ever going to go away, but I think the retrofitting side of things is going to become more. We're going to see more of it. We're seeing a bit more of it, where the people are turning offices into flats. There is a little bit more repurposing stuff. I think there's a push from councils and government to try and do that. I think the only problem you get with developers, I mean, I'm not a builder by any stretch of the imagination, but different floor heights, it doesn't always work that well. And by the time you've been in there and you've taken floors out and you've taken walls out, you're really just saving the facade of the building and a few bits. So are you really retrofitting? Yeah, my view is maybe not, but yeah, I don't know.
So would you recommend getting a second opinion from someone like yourself, Mark, in that situation, so that you can sort of weigh the pros and cons of whether retrofitting is really the sort of cost-effective option that it pretends to be?
Yeah, I mean, look, we'd be happy to come out and help out with anyone. There are things that you can do. You can, if it's a brick building, you can take the bricks away. The demolition industry have been recycling and using steels and doors, and there's lots of stuff out there at the minute that we're doing as an industry, and we're doing quite well. You look at office fit outs. We're taking the raised flooring up. There's a few companies out there, they clean it and they resell it as your second-hand flooring. It's cheaper to put in than new flooring. Carpet tiles are being recycled. Plastic windows, we're getting money for plastic windows now. As I say, bricks. There's a big push on trying to get steels out of buildings, but at the minute the industry's kind of, if you take a steel, it costs us a lot more to take a steel out by hand carefully so that you can reuse it and put it back into another building. And as with anything, there's a commercial element to it. So it's got to be commercially viable for us to do that before we start. So the money's got to be there in that retrofit or second-hand market, if you like.
Right. So, but there is also sort of a green element to demolition if you're sort of repurposing and recycling the elements that are coming out of that building.
Yeah, I mean, as a sort of standard, we probably recycle when we demolish a building. We probably recycle 90 to 95% of that building anyway. But as you say, there are, as I said, your bricks, carpet. There's a lot more streams that we can use now to divert it from landfill and actually recycle that material and reuse it back into the builds.
Right. I'm just going to dive back into the chat and ask if anyone's got any questions. Obviously, please submit them for Mark, and we'll happily be able to answer those for you. So yeah, Mark, I mean, is there a particular project that you're working on recently that you're particularly proud of? Is there one that really stands out for you?
I mean, all of them are pretty good at the minute. As I say, we're still Beecroft's still quite a young company. We've gone from sort of nothing. Our turnover's increased year on year, which we're pretty proud of. As I say, we started out, we had our boots back on, me and my brother, and we were sort of out there back doing it. We've got to a point now where we're actually doing demolition. It's not as easy as we thought it looked from the outside, but we're quite we're quite proud of what we produced so far, and we want to push on and get bigger and get our name out there, so to speak. So I think for me, really, at the minute, actually getting Beecroft to where it is quite a proud moment for me. I've done some nice demolition projects. I mean, we worked on a nuclear site. There was a nightmare plant called a NOx scrubber, and it was the only one done in the UK or in Europe. We were the first ones to do that. We was quite proud of that at the time. So I've had quite a few milestones in my career. So
fantastic. As a business, how long have you been operating?
We're in our third year, so we're still, as I say, we are still quite a young company.
Stuff. And Glenn's asked a question. So, what is the general percentage of demo is recycled, and do you get any tax benefits for this?
No. I mean, we would generally, as I said, we generally try to recycle on a demolition project. We'd be looking to recycle 90 to 95% of materials. Obviously, asbestos we can't recycle. The majority of stuff is now diverted from landfill, and it's taken to waste transfer stations where it's sorted into its various waste streams. There is a new thing that's come out with regard to wood, where we're now having to look at, I can't remember the exact date because it's quite, but any wood that's been treated is now going to goes as a different waste now. It's not clean wood, it goes as a sort of a hazardous wood. That's sort of come into over the last couple of years, and they're really starting to push on with that, the Environment Agency. But there are no tax benefits to doing that, if I'm honest.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up in terms of the questions there. Mark, I want to say thank you very much for your time in this session. I've certainly learned a lot, in terms of it being such an exact science and everything that goes into it. I'm sure obviously there's a lot more that if we spent a day on site with you, you'd be able to blow our minds in terms of what goes into it and stuff that you have to be aware of that you're not necessarily. So yeah, just to say to everyone in the audience that if you haven't signed up for UK Homes Network, then there is a free membership that you can sign up. Just go to the App Store, search UK Homes Network. You'll be able to chat to Mark and direct message him if you've got any more questions or anything that you can think of in the follow-up. But Mark, where can people find you?
Yeah, please do visit us, www.beecroft demolition. It's BEECROFT. We, as I say, we are predominantly a demolition contractor, but we are also consultants as well. So if you have got any needs or any questions around demolition, or you're looking for any advice, please do reach out to us. We're happy to help. As I say, myself and my brother, we've got probably 40 years experience between us. If there's anything we can assist with, then we're happy to assist. Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, thanks everyone. Really appreciate it. Our next webinar will be on the 11th of April. We've got George Croucher, who is the councillor for Stratford upon Avon. He is a town planner by trade, and he's going to talk to us about some of the latest developments in terms of planning and what's happening within the West Midlands in regards to planning as well. Just leaves it from me to say thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate it. Thanks to Mark. And yeah, sign up for the network and you'll be able to message Mark directly, or alternatively check out his website for more information. Cheers, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.